Namaskar and welcome back to Aviation Avi. Go where you feel the most alive. With this video, I welcome you to part 2B of the video on wildlife hazard management. In the part 1 and part 2A of the video, we have understood why are airports at all concerned about wildlife hazards. How does the airport operator manage wildlife hazards at an airport? And we have understood the organizational setup typically present at most of the aerodromes. We have understood how and where are wildlife hazards identified mostly, and what are the risks associated, and what are the most prevalent active and passive methods of bird control. How are these risks mitigated? So with this, we have completed part 1 and part 2A of this video on wildlife hazard management. Moving on, with part 2B of this video, we will understand how are wildlife strikes reported. How is this data collected from this reporting useful to the aviation fraternity as a whole? And we will also learn to evaluate a wildlife control program at an airport. So without any delay, let's get started. So this slide speaks for itself. You can see the impact a bird strike can have on the safe operations of aircraft. A bird strike can not only cost millions of dollars, it can cost the engines of the aircraft, but also it can cost lives. So this is the impact a potential bird strike can have on the safe operations of aircraft. This is why reporting bird strikes and extracting important data from these bird strikes is very, very important. Furthermore, to understand the impact of bird strike, let us look at this case study of the Brussels airport, the Zaventem airport. On the 25th of May 2008, a Boeing 747, that is the queen of the skies of the Kalita Air, rejected takeoff after an European Kestrel strike, due to which the aircraft overran the runway and the aircraft broke into 3 pieces. The incident investigation identified that the accident was caused by the decision to reject the takeoff 12 knots after passing the V1 speed. As a result of this accident, there were 5 minor injuries. Total number of passengers on board were unknown, but the aircraft was damaged, and this was caused by the strike of European Kestrel. And this incident was caused due to a bird strike, as you can see here. This is the impact the bird had on the aircraft. The second case study talks about the Eastern Airlines Flight 375, where the aircraft was struck by starlings, 10,000 starlings approximately 20 seconds after the takeoff. The bird struck 3 or 4 engines, and due to which it lost power, stalled, and crashed into the Boston Harbor. It resulted in more stringent Federal Aviation Administration guidelines for aircraft design and maintenance. Because of this incident, there were 62 fatalities out of 72 on board, and the aircraft was completely destroyed. Today, we know about these case studies as a result of correct reporting and record keeping. With this, let us look at the importance of correct reporting and record keeping. The data collected because of such incidents can be analyzed and further be used for future references, like understanding what kind of species is more prevalent at a particular area on the airport. Why are they attracted there? At what phase of flight are they most likely to strike the aircraft? And which are the parts of the aircraft that are more likely to have undergone a strike? So with this data, we can prepare more effective wildlife hazard management plan, not only for one particular airport, but this data can be used by the entire aviation fraternity to make their wildlife hazard management plan more effective. Taking samples of blood or feathers stuck on an aircraft due to a strike can also be very effectively used to identify a prevalent species at an aerodrome and target the wildlife hazard management plan for that particular species to mitigate that particular hazards. So this is the importance of correct reporting, appropriate reporting, and taking action against those reports to have effective wildlife hazard management at an airport. strike database should be analyzed to determine the number of trends, including but not limited to risk with respect to a particular species. For example, a small, let's say a sparrow, may not impact the aircraft as in as a manner in which a huge bird like an eagle would impact the aircraft, or let's say an Asian open bill would impact the aircraft. So, the wildlife strike data can help us analyze the risk associated with particular species prevalent at the airport. It can help us understand what particular locations at the airport are more susceptible to strikes, whether the strikes are seasonal activities, understand the season in which bird strikes are mostly occurring. Annual strike trends by species and location can also be analyzed using these data. Understanding the phase of flight prone to strikes, like whether these strikes are happening mostly on takeoff roll, initial climb, cruise, descent approach, or landing roll. Altitude at which these strikes are mostly occurring. Types of aircraft which are most likely to undergo strike. Particular parts of the aircraft which are more prone to strikes. Effect of strikes on aircraft, like because of a strike, what is happening with the aircraft, whether it is rejecting takeoff, emergency or precautionary landing, emergency shutdown of the engines, or other consequent events. Understanding the relevant meteorological conditions are also important, and using the bird strike data, many such relevant information can be extracted and analysis can be made in order to target the wildlife hazard management plan more effectively. Data can also be used to provide warning to the aircraft crew through NOTAMs. It can also be used to understand the cost associated with wildlife strikes, and this data can be a source of many more relevant information. Now, how do we understand whether the bird strike was confirmed or it was just a suspected strike? There are definitions for it. Any reported collision between the bird or other wildlife and the aircraft in which evidence in the form of carcass were found on the ground or damage, or evidence was found on the aircraft, like there is a dead carcass of the bird on the aircraft, and in this case there are blood stains and dent on the aircraft due to the bird strike. So these are enough evidences to prove that there was a confirmed bird strike with this aircraft. There are strikes which may be unconfirmed as well. The reported collision between bird or other wildlife and an aircraft for which no physical evidence was found, like there was no damage to the aircraft, no remains of blood or spears, or there were no carcass on the aircraft on the runway or the taxiways found. In that case, we can conclude there was an unconfirmed strike. In case of rejected takeoff or go around activities, these also can be a result of bird strikes, but they may be unconfirmed or suspected bird strikes only when there are no evidences of confirmed bird strike. Unconfirmed bird strike can also be concluded when wildlife is found dead on the aerodrome where there is no obvious links with the collision of an aircraft. Upon seeing this, it may also be confirmed with the ETC, with the aircraft crew of the recent takeoff or landing, that whether they experienced a bird strike or not, and if they say negative, this can also be categorized as an unconfirmed bird strike or a suspected bird strike. Now, wildlife strikes can be reported using the Wildlife Strike Reporting Form as promulgated by Director General of Civil Aviation Air Safety Circular 2 of 2011. This is applicable in India, or the ICAO contracting state shall follow the IBIS, that is the ICAO Bird Strike Information System. Follow the IBIS, that is the ICAO Bird Strike Information System, in coordination with their regulators. In the reporting and investigation of wildlife occurrences, special attention should be given to confirmed multiple bird strikes and turbine bird ingestions, because this can be very dangerous. The aerodrome operator ensures that species of wildlife carcasses can be identified as correct as possible after the wildlife strike by an in-house specialist or external ornithologist. This will ensure that the wildlife hazard management plan at an airport is targeted towards the critical species present at the aerodrome. Reports of wildlife strikes should be made available both internally, that is, to the wildlife control coordinator, the wildlife controllers, the duty airside operators, officers, and safety management unit, and externally to the regulator for data keeping. The aerodrome operator should also establish a mechanism that allows them to get informed about wildlife strikes reported on or near their aerodrome. This will help them effectively manage their wildlife hazard management plan. This is the typical wildlife strike reporting form. Here, you can find the details of the aircraft that has undergone the strike, details of the time and the date of occurrence, along with the details of the departure and the arrival aerodrome. These specify the phase of flight at which the wildlife strike has occurred. These specify the particular part of the aircraft on which this strike has occurred. This portion of the report specifies the impact the strike had on the aircraft operation. This specifies the prevalent weather conditions during the strike. And this specifies whether the aircraft crew was warned about the wildlife activity near the aerodrome. So this overall gives an indication or gives a detailed information that can be extracted from a wildlife strike. So this will help us in correct data keeping and recording such incidents and analyzing them to further make the wildlife hazard plan more effective. The wildlife controller should record wildlife presence on the aerodrome, their control activities, and the result of these actions. The intervals for recording depends on the scale of aerodrome operations and the traffic that is present at the aerodrome. They should record each and every data during their patrolling or inspections. Logging of this information is mainly critical for two important reasons. After a wildlife strike, the aerodrome will be able to demonstrate what actions have been taken to prevent the incident. And if this information is well processed and analyzed, it can be very useful and it can be a valuable input for the yearly risk assessment and possible update of the wildlife management program. Look at some active ways of evaluating the wildlife control program at an aerodrome. We know that the wildlife hazard prevention should be an integral part of the aerodrome safety management system. The following questions are directed to the airport management, and these assist in understanding whether the wildlife hazard management plan at an airport is effective. Understanding the local risk assessment. Has a bird or wildlife strike reporting procedure been implemented at the airport? That means whether the bird strike or wildlife strikes happening at an airport undergo a streamlined reporting channel or they just go unnoticed. What is the wildlife bird strike rate at an airport over the last 5 years? With this data, we can understand whether the airport is keeping track of what kind of wildlife strikes are occurring at an aerodrome and what is their impact, what is it a result of, what is the attractant present near the aerodrome that is causing these strikes. Is this data well maintained by the airport? Further, is there a procedure to collect regularly information about birds, wildlife, dead carcasses that are dead and living? Further, next, has the airport operator established a procedure to collect regular information about birds, wildlife, both dead and living, that are found around the aerodrome? This data will help in understanding what kind of species are present near the aerodrome and channelizing the mitigation plans accordingly. Further, how many reports from pilots are related to intrusions from wildlife, other birds over the last 5 years? This data is also very important for channelizing the wildlife control plan. Has a list of bird wildlife attractants at and surrounding the airports been completed? So, the airport operator should understand and have a list of the birds or wildlife attractants near the airport, like there can be slaughterhouses, water bodies near the airport. If the aerodrome operator has a list of these attractants, they can liaise with the local bodies and mitigate such hazards by ensuring that there is no disposing of carcasses in the open. The water bodies that are present, the open water bodies near the airports, are covered using nets or meshes so that they cannot directly attract wildlife towards the aerodrome. So having this data can help us target the wildlife management plan, particularly to the hazards present at the aerodrome, which makes the plan itself more effective in controlling wildlife hazards. Let's look at some of the questions that help us understand the wildlife control program. It is important to understand if there is a wildlife control officer. If there is a wildlife control officer responsible for management of wildlife at an airport, whose whole and sole responsibility is to ensure the effectiveness of the wildlife hazard management plan. Further, is there a land use plan being established with regards to effective land use on and off the airport as it pertains to wildlife control program? Because only mitigating hazards within the aerodrome is not enough. There should be a land use plan for the area around the airport. There should be area of jurisdiction determined in order to control wildlife hazards around the aerodrome. There should be licensing of the airport authorities with the local authorities in order to control the hazards like dumping of wastes around the airport. What are the ecological measures for implemented to reduce wildlife attractiveness at an airport? Further, it is important to understand whether there is a ecological measures implemented to reduce wildlife attractiveness to the airport and in the vicinity, whether there are plans of covering water bodies, installing bird spikes, or other relevant mitigation measures to make the airport less attractive to birds or wildlife. Is there a habitat management program at an airport? Are there garbage dumps forbidden around the airport? If yes, up to what distance and how is this distance established? Is there an airport fence suitable to prevent hazardous animal incursions? Which scaring methods are implemented at the airport? Are they targeted to a particular species and how effective are these scaring methods? Have the staff been deployed and trained specifically to scare birds and wildlife at an airport? These questions help in analyzing the effectiveness of the wildlife control program. If we have proper data, proper active controls, and coordination with the local authorities around the airport, it is very well understood that the wildlife control program at an airport is very much effective in controlling the wildlife hazards, because data keeping and analyzing the data makes the job very easy to target mitigation towards a particular species. So with this, we come to the end of the video and hope you have understood the importance of data keeping regarding bird strikes and what are the methods and how you can evaluate the wildlife hazard management plan and make the plan at your airport more effective. If you like our work, you can follow us on LinkedIn. The link of our profiles will be given in the description. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, do not forget to like, share and subscribe because your support is our motivation. This is Anvisha Pal signing off, and this presentation was prepared by Mr. Shantanu. This is Aviation Avi. Go where you feel the most alive. Thank you.